Welcome, everybody, to a special episode of the Heelcast. Tonight, we have a very, very special guest. We have Larkin joining me, but we also have pro wrestler Mario Bokara. How you doing, Mario?
Very good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Very excited to have you on. We definitely want to hear about your story. But so tell us about your birthplace.
Well, I was originally, I'm from New Milford, New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey. My father actually was born in Privlaka, Croatia, so which is where the Croatian heritage comes from. So that is my real name. It is my real nationality and heritage. It's not like that was a gimmick. Some people thought that I made up that name and made up my heritage, but that's 100% real. That's my real name. It's my birth name. And part of my heritage. So, but I'm originally from New Jersey, and I was about 38 years in New Jersey, and now I'm currently residing in Tampa, Florida.
Just to interject, I mean, so when you say like you're Croatian and like you were born Croatian, you're not like the Nikita Koloff gimmick, like he wasn't really Russian, so you're actually who you
are.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not like I didn't decide to play a Russian when I'm actually, of
course.
It's my real name. It's my birth name. It's my real heritage. My mother's full Italian. My father's full Croatian. So.
Well, that's cool, man.
I think my mother was born here though. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, I look at it like this, Mario. Like you're living up to your Croatian. I mean, with people in Croatia or around the world, and I think that helps as far as the international standpoint, as well as getting your name out there and representing your people. And it shows a lot the pride and powerful that we see in professional wrestling today.
Oh yeah, it was great to be able to carry my father's name and with that nationality and carry the flag. I was the first guy to carry the Croatian flag on TV for Impact, so
that's awesome.
Which was pretty cool, yeah. So there's a lot of firsts that I got to do. Just didn't get to where I wanted to get as soon as I wanted to get there.
Yeah, well, we saw that on Impact with you and Fallah Bob, Monster Factory Tag Team Champions, coming in on the scene, doing your thing when Impact was GFW, Global Force Wrestling at the time.
Yes. Yeah, we had gotten we had met Jeff Jarrett and Global Force. We worked with them at PWS before we were WrestlePro, and also working at Monster Factory. We were working with Abyss. He had come in as well and had seen us while we were there, and he was good friends with Danny Cage of the Monster Factory, and who I owe a lot to him as well too, for bringing me and Fallah down and doing something with us. And Danny Cage is a really awesome guy, so I owe a lot to him. I wouldn't even be here today in Florida if it wasn't for Danny. So.
Funny story. I don't mean to cut you off, but funny story.
No, of course.
Funny story about like Pro Wrestling Syndicate, now WrestlePro. Like I'll remember as a kid, New York, WLNY TV 55. Like at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, you get to see some Pro Wrestling Syndicate action with Kevin Matthews and all the great talents of Pro Wrestling Syndicate. So that's like a memory for me. You looking great indies like yourself, and how WrestlePro came into fruition. How we see how that's blown up.
Yeah. PWS was a lot of fun. It was a lot of firsts for us all, and working with Kevin and Pat Buck, who was a co-owner at the time, but now he was the head owner of WrestlePro and what he's done. And he's been also a huge influence for me. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am without Pat Buck. So, I mean, I owe a lot to him as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you have Platinum Pat Buck, and you had like Jersey All Pro Wrestling, and with God Rest His Soul, Fat Frank, and you had God Rest His Soul, Billy Firehawk with NWA Cyberspace Wrestling Federation. Like a lot of great like companies and promotions overall in the independent circuit that we saw in New Jersey.
Yeah, there was a lot. It's so funny that you have all that information already. So.
Dude,
that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, that's going back a long ways.
Well, dude, that's my childhood right there. Wayne, New Jersey.
I know.
Yes.
It's bringing up some good memories, though. It's good memories.
Hey, Mario. So I got to ask you, what was your first memory of professional wrestling? Like, what really got you into professional wrestling?
Oh, like the first time I ever saw wrestling, or?
Yeah.
Okay, for me, it was the Saturday. I think it was the main event, and it was the two Hebners when Hogan wrestled Andre.
Yep.
And they did the screw job finish. With
yes.
Two refs. I remember I was a kid. I was watching it, and I was really young. I think I might have been I think it was like 8 or something like that. I'm pretty sure. What was it, 84 or 88?
That was like
I
88,
think it was,
late 80s, 88.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 88. And I remember I was watching it, and I was like so young at the time too. Like that was late for me to be up. So I was watching it, and I fell asleep in the middle of it because I was, 8 years old, 7 years old. And I remember the next morning I woke up and I went over to my father and I said, "Who won?" And he told me, he said, "Andre won." And I was like, "No way, you're full of shit." Can I curse? It's
Yeah.
too late.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I was like, no way. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I couldn't believe, I didn't believe him. So I had to find out for myself how and why. And ever since then, it was like, I was hooked. That was it. And I remembered before I had even seen wrestling, someone in my family gave me one of the large, the rubber, the Hasbros. Were they Hasbros or not Hasbros, the original action figures?
I think those were the LJNs.
Yes,
Yep.
the LJNs, the big rubber ones. And somebody in my family gave me a Hulk Hogan LJN rubber figure. And I had never even seen wrestling, but then I had noticed that guy on TV was the same guy that I had on an action figure. So that was like the first time I'd ever seen, like, because otherwise there was He-Man, Transformers, you had things like that. So you were like, this was the first time that I'd seen an action figure that I had not be a cartoon. Like, it was an actual person. And I remember putting the two together, and ever since then, like, that was it. I was hooked. Like, if wrestling was on, I watched it. Like, that was my first memory of watching wrestling and getting hooked.
I guess you're a lot like me. I mean, Andre, Hogan, WrestleMania 3. That's exactly how I got into wrestling.
Yep. And then that was the next step, was that match. So it was like, and then that was like, that was probably one of I remember getting that from the video store. Oh, it was WrestleMania 3. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great, going into a Blockbuster or wherever and just going down there and seeing all the pay-per-views. And
I used to love that on a Friday night, going to Blockbuster Video and pick out a wrestling tape and a video game. I was set. I was good.
Yep, that was life.
Bag of Doritos.
Don't understand.
You know what I mean? Bag of chips, bottle of soda, ready to go.
Oh, yeah. So, I guess as you got older, obviously, what made you want to be you kind of already explained why you wanted to be a wrestler. Who really got you your foot in the door?
Well, I mean, I was always kind of like hooked into wrestling, and my mother was always really, on me with, like, my mother wanted to be a dancer, like a ballet dancer, like a Broadway dancer. My mother was always had that dream, and she had always told me, she said, just if you have a dream, follow it, whatever it is, just do it, and she was always the kind of one that kind of made me realize that I could, like, if I wanted to do something, I could do it, or at least try it. And so she was always like my biggest supporter of things. But until I told them after I got out of high school that I wanted to go into wrestling, of course, everybody was like, well, if you want to do that, you have to pay for it yourself. I was like, come on, this is such a cheaper route. It's like $3,000, I'm like, you don't got to pay for 4 years of school. I'm like, it's a one-time fee. And they were like, no way. You either have to work or you have to go to school. If you want to do that thing, you got to do it on the side. So I'm like, all right. So I worked full time and I did that on the side. But my original, like, first time of when I thought I would really, like, wanted to wrestle was I used to go to Madison Square Garden with my friend Andy in high school. We used to go. My mother had no idea. We used to take the bus into the city, and we'd go for all the house shows and all these other times. And she would go nuts if she found out that I went to the city without an adult before I was even graduated from high school. But we used to go to watch all the house shows and whatever we could. And I think we were one time, it was right when Shawn Michaels had originally came back and was a babyface. Like right after he wrestled Owen Hart and he won the Intercontinental title.
Yes.
Yeah, right at that moment when he kind of came back and he was a babyface now after being the Heartbreak Kid, and he was the heel. He lost to Diesel at WrestleMania 11. It was in between 11 and 12.
Oh yeah, when he had that iconic match with Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental title. Yep.
Yes, with Jeff Jarrett. Yes, and I remember because that was right after Owen Hart and the whole the kick to the head.
Oh yes.
The insecurity. Yeah, it was like around that whole year. and we went to Madison Square Garden, and this was the first time he was a babyface, and he won his match, and he hopped the rail, and he was walking out through the crowd, and we all ran over there, and I remembered like getting to just like grab hands with him, kind of like if you were gonna bro hug somebody, like that like clasp of hands that you do.
Yep.
Yes.
And I did that with him, and I was like losing my mind, and that was like kind of for me, that was like, I don't know, that was the moment where I was like, I want to be a wrestler. Like, that's it. Like, I don't care. Like, what I got to do, I'm going to be a wrestler. I was like, for whatever reason, I don't know what sunk in that day, but ever since then, I was just like, that's it, That's what I wanted to do.
Well, why don't you tell us about your what school you went to and part of your training?
I originally was trying to go to Monster Factory. The only school that I had known of was Monster Factory. And the same friend that I went to the Madison Square Garden shows with, Andy, we went down to try to find Monster Factory. And they were having a show, and this was before GPS and, like all that stuff. So I think we might have tried to MapQuest something online and we had handwritten directions. And we never found the place. We drove around for maybe 8 hours, 6-8 hours that whole night in Pennsylvania and back, and we couldn't find it. And then I came back up, and a friend of mine, I was working in Paramus Park Mall and at the formal wear store, and a friend of mine was like, yo, I know somebody who's a wrestler. And he's like your height, your age, your weight. And I'm like, really? And he was like, yeah. So this guy, it was a guy by the name of Sure Thing Ryan Wing. I don't know if you guys remember him.
I'll be honest, I don't. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember John the Sure Thing Shane, but I don't remember no Sure Thing Ryan. Okay.
Yeah, his name was a Sure Thing Ryan Wing, and he was come from East Coast Pro Wrestling, ECPW.
Gino Caruso, right?
Yes, out of Lake Hiawatha with Gino Caruso.
Nice.
So he had given me a card, and he said, yeah, go up whenever. And I went up and I talked to Gino, and he's like, whenever you're ready, we're here. And I started my training in February of 2000. At ECPW Lake Hiawatha with Gino Caruso. And I learned a lot from the Kodiak Bear as well while I was up there.
I think with you, like, you're under that, tutelage. We learn from guys like Kodiak Bear, Gino Caruso. I know Rip Rogers as well. I mean, when you think of, like, Southern wrestling, if you will, you think of guys like Rip Rogers, you think of Cornette with his managerial skills, you think of guys like George South. So, I mean, you had a hell of a learning tree.
Yeah, I started with Gino and Bear, and a lot of the guys, there was a group of us that kind of worked with each other and trained each other a lot. And it was Andrew Anderson, Red Hot Russ, Johnny Thunder, and myself. All four of us were kind of we worked with each other a lot for the first 4 or 5 years that I was at Gino's. And in that time, too, I would go to Tom Pritchard camps, Dr. Tom camps, whenever I could go. I would always go up to Massachusetts or wherever we could find him. We would go to clinics with him. And camps, because it wasn't like it is now, like where they want you to go work everywhere. They used to not want you to work anywhere else. Like they would only want you to work for them, and that was like it. Most of the places, especially a long time ago, nobody wanted you to work for anybody but them. So it's different now. Everybody's like, you have to go out and get work, and we knew that back then. You needed to go out and learn more and get work everywhere to be better.
Sure.
But the promoters didn't, you know what I mean? All the promoters were the same.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted you to go anywhere else, But we already knew that.
It's
kind of like that old school thinking. If I let my guy wrestle over here, they're just going to steal him, kind of, right?
Yeah, and they were still kind of in territory mode in their minds. Like this was their territory. So if we're in Jersey and you go work for another Jersey company, then they're only going to come over there and they're not going to come over here anymore. But I think they knew that if you left, you weren't going to come back eventually. But I always felt like if everybody just worked together, it would have been fine, but.
I mean, there's an old adage like united, not divided. I mean, you see everybody going places, whether it be from Impact Wrestling on the indies, like an NYWC, Creative Pro, Wrestle Pro. Oh, I'm going to go over here to Ring of Honor. You see a lot of people moving around, kind of like in the old territory days. It's kind of like what's old is new now. I mean, you get to see a lot of people working, and it's great just so everybody can hone and apply their crafts in different promotions.
Oh, yeah, the way it is now is everybody goes around and they're working everywhere, which is great, and that just helps them and helps the promotion. It helps, guys learn more. It's like, that was just, we always were like, if everybody just worked together, it would be just such a easier, a better place. Like, and now look at the way wrestling is now. It's like, it's just such a different state than it was 20 years ago, like when I first got into it.
It's kind of like when
But
you look at like the women's divisions as well. Like you see so many great women's divisions in the pro wrestling promotions like Ring of Honor, WWE, Impact Wrestling,
of
what have
course.
you, and Stardom in Japan. But it's just like you see like for instance Shimmer, Shine, Rise. Those are like three
Right.
prominent ones right there for the ladies as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of the women's matches now are like, for me, it was like even one of like my top 5 matches of all time is like Sasha Banks versus Bayley at
Yeah,
Brooklyn.
and
Like that's one of like my top 5 favorite matches like ever.
I think.
And I would watch some of their matches and just kind of like, because they were working at like a slower pace as well, telling more stories. So it was like they kind of got me. It was always like they were. It wasn't how much you did and what you did. It was how you did it that makes it. Like, and that was like a perfect example of like that match was like
Yeah, and
just perfection.
Yeah, the psychology in that, like the reverse
Yeah.
Rana she did off of that, like it told a great story. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mario, as a kid growing up, going to Madison Square Garden, WrestleMania 20, like the 2 women's matches on that card were Victoria and Molly Holly, and you had the pillow fight. And here's the thing. It's so much change, and it's great to have that sex appeal, but it's like, let these girls wrestle. Give them time. There's a lot of shine. There's great with the appeal, but let them go out and do their thing.
Yeah, it's nice to see that, that the women are getting a platform to go on, because like even like the Rumble matches, like some of the Rumbles, some of the years, the past couple of years, I think one of the I don't remember which year it was, but I thought the women's Rumble was better than the men's one time. Some of the Hell in the Cell matches have been great. Like, I mean, I was a huge fan of Sasha Banks anyway. I think she's one of the really good workers. I mean, and the 4, Charlotte, Becky, Sasha, I mean, all of them together were like, it's great to see the women's division now. I think like Bianca Belair is amazing. I think she's going to be a huge star. I mean, there's just so many. Rhea Ripley that's doing now. I mean, Shayna Baszler, like we saw her when she first came on the Indies, and it's like just to see where she's at now. It's great, like as opposed to the way some of the women were perceived back in the day on it, and it's just the way that maybe it's not even wrestling. I think it was just the way that the world was kind of, you know what I mean? Like it really, like it was just kind of the way culture was, or reality, based stuff was. It's just the way it was. So it's nice to see that, they're just as good, if not better, than the men. By any means, hands down.
Of course. I mean, when you had Sasha Banks in Chaotic Wrestling and as Mercedes KV, and to see where she's come, I mean, it's my God.
Oh, Mercedes Martinez. I mean, like, forget it. I'm like, I knew her from so far back in the day, and I was always like, even her and Sumi Sakai.
Yes.
Like, I was like, I love you guys. You guys are awesome. Like, I would just tell them to their face. I'm like, I straight up love you guys. Like, just as wrestlers. Like, I'm like, they're just amazing.
And when
I'd watched some of their matches, and they were just incredible.
Yeah, when she popped up in the AEW Battle Royal, and then she did the Mae Young Classics, I'm like, this woman, for the time and work that she's put in, I mean, like I said, around the same time with you in the 2000s, Mario, it's like, this girl's got to be signed, and now she's doing her thing on NXT.
I was so happy to see her in the Women's Rumble this year. Like, I had goosebumps. Like, so awesome that Mercedes Martinez got to be in the Women's Rumble, like a WWE Women's Rumble. Like, that's amazing. And Mia Yim too. She was in Jersey Opera with us doing Southside Players Club. Like, she was with us, and to see where she's gone now, it's like, we knew too from go. I was like, she was like, I kind of thought she was like the female version of Loki, like at the time, like just her style. It was like, she was just awesome.
Just to go back to Jersey All Pro for a second, I mean, you're in the list of who's, man. I mean, your Low Keys, your Homicides, your Jay Lethal, dare I say, Azriel. I mean, we had so many talents in Jersey All Pro Wrestling. That's an alumni all in itself.
Yeah, I mean, Jersey All Pro, and then I worked with Jay Lethal for Ace Pro Wrestling with Mike Morgan. That was where I first worked with Danny Moff. We got to work with Daniel Bryan, Christopher Daniels out there. I mean, like, that's like, it's so weird because it's like I've only, like, when I look back on things, it's like I've gotten to work with so many people, like even like Kenny Omega, Sami Callihan through PWS, and Evil, before he was Evil, he came from New Japan over, and he was working with us as well. Yeah, Watanabe, and it was just like, I mean, it's just so many people. Like, I look at it now and I'm like, wow, I'm like, really got myself around. You know, like it's like impressive for me. I'm like when I look back at it, as far as I don't think of myself as I'm my own worst critic and my own worst enemy. I don't think highly of myself a lot, which is just like I think it's just a personal thing. But I look back on things that I've done and I'm like, you know what, I've got a pretty decent resume, I think. So, you know.
Well, I think when you and Falaba debuted on Impact, I definitely wanted to see more of you guys together because I'm sure you heard this a lot, but you kind of had that Owen Hart, Yokozuna look, and I feel like we didn't get to see enough of you guys. Can you kind of explain like what happened?
Yeah, I mean when we first got to Impact, it was Jeff Jarrett had just taken over again, and Abyss, and we got the call from Abyss to come down. It was right when the Hardys were there, right before they went back to when they showed up at WrestleMania.
Yes,
it was right before then, and they were bringing in. Apparently, they were going to bring in like all these tag teams, and they were going to have the Hardys. I think they were going to have the Hardys like defeat and all the champions. Like we were supposed to drop the Monster Factory tag titles to the Hardys. That was the original plan. Mm-hmm. And then the Hardys were gone, and then we talked with Abyss, and they were like, "Still come down," you know, because we were like, "Are we still going to come down?" Like this was the plan that we were told, you know, like, and they're like, "Yeah, still come down," and everything, because we met Jeff from Global Force when he came and worked with us at PWS Wrestle Pro. Nick Aldis was there too. He had come down and worked with us in one of the matches there, and Jeff was just such an awesome guy, and he really gave so much opportunity to so many people when Global Force came around, and even before when he started TNA. I mean, like he's just one of the nicest people in wrestling and most like giving person like I've ever met. I had watched Jeff Jarrett growing up, like we were saying about him and Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title, like one of the, you know, that's also like one of my top 10 Intercontinental title matches like of all time, you know, like. And working with him was just awesome, you know, like just bringing us in. And we were just, I think they didn't really know. A lot of things were kind of still being changed, you know, at the time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like funds it was trying to make sure that the company was generating revenue and not hemorrhaging it at the time. Mm-hmm. So we kind of everybody liked what we were doing, and they were kind of not too sure what they wanted to do with it. So it was just a matter of finding the right storyline for us. And we did a house show. We worked with LAX, and we had a really, really good match with LAX, anybody can have a good match with LAX because they're incredible. Santana and Ortiz, and I'm so happy to see what they're doing now in AEW with Chris Jericho and the Inner Circle and everybody. Like that's awesome. It's so great because those guys worked so hard to get where they are.
You know what's funny? I mean, like, I don't mean to cut you off, but when you look at Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho, Jeff Jarrett, the Intercontinental title, which they just did the watch along, and Jeff Jarrett with the Global Force Wrestling like vision that you had. I mean, you saw guys like Kurt Hawkins, who created a pro, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second here. Bobby Roode, the now Killer Cross, who is now a part of the NXT brand. I mean, there's so many people that really came there. Gallows and Anderson. You had a list of crop of talent on the GFW roster, and then what we saw with Impact with yourself and Falaba.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, Jeff was just like, you know, like he had a great eye, you know, for talent, and he just like, you know, I was just thankful to be part of it, you know, that he came and they'd seen something, and there wasn't, you know, like anybody who was Croatian, literally anybody on, you know, and I know now, I mean, like, you know, like in NXT, there's Dominik Dijakovic, but at the same time too, I don't know how much heritage he has in him. As far as I know, it's not a lot, but from what I understand, you know, it's, you know, there might be a piece in there. I'm not sure, but he's a great guy. He's an incredible worker. I'm not taking anything away from him. It's just, I feel like too, for me, I felt like at the time it was when World Cup was big, Croatia was in the finals. And I feel like maybe wrestling was like, hey, we need a Croatian guy. And I wasn't really active at the time. And, you know, I'm also not 6'4", and, you know, so, sure. You know, it's, I feel like they might think, it might be easy to add a VIC at the end of somebody's name, but at the same time, too, if you're not pronouncing it correctly, it's like, it kind of can go the way it goes. But, I'm really happy it's great that, it's getting out there that, and there's another guy, Chris Jokic, that I met in Croatia, and he's one of the only other guys that, he's like straight up full born and raised in Croatia, like Zadar, like, so I'm hoping one day I can, something good comes through for him, because he's like the first full grown Croatian wrestler that I know of. So, and he's an incredible talent too. So I worked with him this past year. I had my last match in Hungary, and which was a big bucket list for me to do anyway. So it was just to wrestle overseas. But I hope one day something great happens for him because he works really hard, and we're trying to help him bring wrestling to Croatia, which would be awesome.
I think what's cool for you, too, is, like, you've gotten to work with, like, OVW guys like Deuce and Domino and Cody Rhodes. So I saw your match with him and Leo Rush, like, in 2017, I believe. This is right when Cody was just, like, getting on to the indies. So, like, you've got to work with that crop, like Deuce and Domino. You did some WWE talent as well. Simon Dean, Rob Conway, Velocity and Heat, respectively. Around that particular time period, you had Simon Dean, who would then go on to be Talent Relations, and you had Rob Conway, the con man. Dude, that's a list right there.
Yeah, that was right before I had gone down to try to go to I went to OVW camps and learned. There was Jim Cornette was down there for the tryout camps, and then Rip Rogers, and then I had gone to one, and they had said that you have a lot of good potential, but we think you need to work on a couple of things. You got to work, everybody, everything. They said you need a little bit of work on everything, but you got a good base. I was like, okay. So I went back and I worked on everything, and I came back a year later and I did the trial camp again. And Rip Rogers said, well, you worked. He said, well, you got better at everything that we asked you to get better at. He's like, but your body still sucks, but he's like, but you got better. So, and him and Danny Davis were kind of like, hey, I think it's a good opportunity for you to come down. I feel like you can. You benefit. They're not guaranteeing anything, but, and so that was when I kind of packed my stuff and went down, and we went right into the intermediate class with Rip. And I learned more from Rip Rogers in 1 year than I learned in 6 years on the independents before that from anybody else. So Rip Rogers, like, completely made me look at everything differently, like everything, like just life and maturity and everything different. I owe a lot too to Rip Rogers because I always tell everybody he would say too, like, you watch you look at wrestling like in black and white, like you're watching a black and white TV set, and eventually one day the channel changes and all of a sudden it's in color and it's in high definition, and it's like, and he's the guy that changed that channel for me, like made me look at everything a whole different way. But even being down there too, with like when Paul Heyman was down there. Mm-hmm. CM Punk was down there. The Miz was down there. That was like when you first saw the Miz go from, he was a babyface, and when they had him turn heel, you were like, dude, this guy is going to be a star. Like, when you saw him work heel, I was like, oh man. Ooh, man.
You know what's funny about that, too? It's like, when he did, like, UPW and he did OVW, like, the dude comes out, he's coming off the $1 Million Tough Enough, he's doing the hoorah, he's got the faux hawk, he's beaten Tatanka on Friday Night SmackDown, then you just see that heel and how he, came into his own with Morrison. That dude has grown leaps and bounds since 06, since the OVW, UPW runs. That's a guy from heel work, mic work, the dude has it.
Oh, yeah, it was like, he was still he was still super, super nice. Like, I was coaching the beginners class at the beginning of 2006, because I went down in 2005, and I was in the intermediate class. And then eventually in 2006, Mike Mondo was coaching the beginners class right before he went up with the Spirit Squad. And Seth Skyfire was also another. Yeah,
wasn't he with Chet Jablonski, right? One of those?
Yes. Yep, Chet the Jet. Yes, he was. He was down there too. And he was coaching the beginners class as well. And another guy, Russell Simpson, was coaching the beginners class. And then finally, Rip was like, "Would you want to do it?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Of course." So it was like, that was like awesome to get to do that. So it was like, and that was like a big Like to me, that was a big compliment, that they, like it was so funny because it was like if people got signed, they would bring them, to like the beginner's class if they didn't know anything about wrestling. And it's like the guy coaching the beginner's class doesn't work for the company. But if you get signed, you come to my class. It's like, it was just funny. But, like it was great. The whole thing was great. Some of my favorite memories was being in OVW.
I mean, and you had like Bobby Lashley, and you had Jillian Hall. You had so many people there. Derek Nykirk. I mean, Dean Viss, Dean Jablonski, the whole nine. Everybody was there. Brent Albright.
Beth Phoenix.
Yes.
Beth Phoenix. We saw her like this. She did a run-in on one show, and it was like the second the camera went to her, just running to the ring, like everybody just popped. Like we're all like, holy hell! Like look at this! Like Jesus! Like she looked like she was coming for your head, like, and she looked awesome running to the ring, and like it was just like that was like you knew too. Like even when Cody first walked out with his first match against Pat Buck, we were like, there's no way this guy hasn't done this before, because you're like, but I mean, it's like just a second, it's like you could see it was like when people would come out, and then like we said with like Miz, it was like second you saw him work heel, you were like, dude.
I think
CM Punk too.
Yeah.
It's like it's just crazy.
I think the last thing I'll add to that, just going back to your Beth Phoenix for something, man, her and Katie Lee Burchill, I remember had a kick-ass ladder match for OVW.
Oh yeah, Beth was awesome, and she's just a great person too. Like she was another one. Everybody was like, we were down there with too, like Santino Marella. I mean, he was a really good friend of mine too down there, and it was great to see, where he'd gone to. Serena Deeb, when she was in the Straight Edge Society, She was down there with us. Like it was a lot of people down there when I was there in 2005 and 6. It was really a crazy time to see how many people came up. Like I said, Bobby Lashley was another guy that would be coming around, and he'd be picking up garbage with us at the end of the show, like the beginners guys. Like, like he was Bobby Lashley, and he would come help us clean up the arena. Like that was just the type of person that he was. Like you could just, like he didn't have to do that.
You know what it is too. Like around this time, I'll be honest with you. Watching No Mercy 2005, Bobby Lashley, Simon Dean, he's feeding him the cheeseburgers, Simon System, and I said to myself as a 13, I'm like, no way would I see this man, world champion, MMA fighter, and just look at the career that Bobby Lashley has had.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, like it's crazy. A lot.
Yeah, there was a big improvement. Like when I saw Bobby Lashley's WWE run, and then his first TNA run. And then he was kind of like, I don't know, it seemed like he was out of wrestling for a little bit, or at least he wasn't really on a TV. And then he kind of came back to TNA, and all of a sudden he was just like 10 times better than he was before. He just really learned. I don't know what he did in that time frame, but he came back a lot better.
Yeah, when we got down to Impact with me and Fowler, it was like he was one of the guys too that was, I mean, like a lot of the guys were really great with, with us. Most of, really everybody was really cool, as far as just, everybody being very opening and warm and responsive, and the locker room was really cool. I think it just at the time too, it was like nobody really knew what was going on. There was still a lot of changing of the guards. Nobody really knew who was in charge. And people were not really too sure what was going on. So, we were originally, when we were going back to Impact, what you guys were asking about what kind of happened with us too, was my father and myself worked with LAX, and then after that, Jeff was like, I think we're going to turn you guys babyface, because that's what we were babyface anyway in Monster Factory, and we were always just Fowler is like just a big child, and which is and he's one of my best friends through wrestling, and he's just like he's always out there just having fun, and he's always trying to crack people up or make people laugh or do silly things, and I was always a little more serious about stuff, and he kind of lightened me up a lot, and we just had a lot of fun together. And they were going to turn us babyface, and we were like, yes, like, please, please turn us babyface. Mm-hmm. And then at the last taping in August, I ended up tweaking my meniscus in a match with Alberto Del Rio's brother. I forget what his name. I can't. Oh. I feel horrible about what the name is.
Oh, Dos Caras Jr., one of the Dos Caras, yes.
Yes. It was his brother, and we were supposed to work, and then the match was gonna happen, then it wasn't gonna happen, then it was gonna happen, and then it wasn't gonna happen. So we were in and out of the studio, and it was hot outside, and it was cold inside, and it was hot outside. So like you weren't really able to properly stretch. And at the time, then we finally had the match, and like it was like during the first minute of chaining, I felt something in my knee go, and then eventually it was like 2 months later, it like just went in practice, and then that was where I pretty much was gone, and I didn't really hear anything back from Impact. They were changing a lot of things. A lot of things were changing. Scott D'Amore was in charge then. And it was just kind of bad timing, like it was just kind of the way things rolled. Rolled for me at times. A lot of the times how I left OVW was I tore my ACL. So injuries and just timing have been plagued a lot of my time in wrestling. So it's, but I guess you try to look at it as everything happens for a reason, so you just try to look at it on the bright side. I mean, if I never went down to Impact, I would have never met Jennifer, who I'm with now, in Tampa. And I've known her. I met her. She worked with one of the gear makers as a seamstress for Impact. And, she's like a blessing for me. So it was like, I look at it as all those things. If I never would have made it there, and if Danny Cage would have never called me to come down to Monster Factory to work with Punisher Martinez, who's now Damian Priest, like I would have never even found Abyss, who would have found us and Fala, and who would have brought us in, and we wouldn't have been at Impact. And 3 years later, I'm here in Tampa living with her, So it's like, it's just amazing how the circle of life works. Like if this one little thing didn't happen, you would, like it's amazing.
I mean, not to get too spiritual on you guys, but I mean,
no.
God bless first and foremost to you and your wife, love and happiness.
We're not married, but we're together. Well,
love and happiness regardless.
Hopefully
exactly.
One day.
Sure.
Yes. But no, I heard to call her my wife, but it's all good.
Okay, that's cool. But no, man. I mean, I look at it like this: when two souls, intertwine, and and the whole nine there. I mean, life happens, and everything happens for a reason in this thing here that we call life. And I mean, you had your matches with OVE, you had your matches with the Veterans of War, and throughout your career, throughout your tenure, I mean, it's amazing just to see your progression.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see how things have gone, and a lot of times those injuries and those little things ended up changing the way I would work when I got back, and it would change a lot of stuff. And some people would tell me they're like everything you do now is just has so much more meaning, or you don't do it. And I'm like, well, a lot of the times you have to slow down because you physically can't go any faster than that, So I had to learn to slow down. I mean, at this point now, I've had both of my ACLs are replaced. I had 4 discs in my neck that were herniated, 2 in my neck, 2 in my back. I missed like a good year and a half because of I had 5 epidurals in my spine. I have half a bicep on my right arm right now. I mean, just so many injuries that are, that I've worked through and I kept working through. Now it's like, I'm 39 now. I'm going to be 40 at the end of this year. So I've started in February 2000. So, I don't feel like I'm where I wanted to end up. I don't feel like I'm finished yet, but at the same time too, I'm not sure how much more I can physically take. So I would love to. It's just a matter of, right now, the last year that I had was a lot of ups and downs with injuries as well. I took a couple of good shots that I had over the course of a few months of last year, and really kind of had to make me step back a little bit and, just pump the brakes and be like, look, dude, like there's life after 40, like what kind of quality of life are you going to have if you keep going the way you're going? So
sure. I mean,
it's hard, but at the same time, it's like, the door's not shut. Nothing's over. It's just a matter of right now. Everything is kind of like, I'm still figuring a lot of things out. So,
I mean, you had a match on one of Impact's Twitch events not long ago, and I think it was in conjunction with Wrestle Pro, I believe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I think that was the last time I did see you, at least on like the Impact side of things.
Yeah, that was the last time I was working there with Impact. I believe it was was a triple threat match.
Yes.
Yeah, with Chris Payne and Christopher Abiculing.
Yes.
So that was the last. Yeah, that was the last time I'd had a match I had on Twitch or for Impact. It was, and that was another one too where I felt like I probably a lot of the times I was a little more giving than I should have been at times. Where like sometimes you need to. It's a hard thing because sometimes you want to help other guys so much you end up not shining yourself up as much as you probably should. You know? So a lot of the times are, I think there was things like that too. And, it's just, you look back on them and you're like, I probably could have did a little better for myself on some things. I have a lot of matches where I felt like I did that, but, coaching is a big thing that I loved doing. I've been coaching for 13 years. So over the course between ACE, Ohio Valley Wrestling, and with WrestlePro. So I was there for 6 years coaching alongside with Pat Buck as one of the assistant coaches. And now Sean Donovan and Danny Moff have taken over, and also Bobby Wayward, who was a guy that started from scratch with PWS. And now he's, one of the head trainers. So, it's great to see like those guys step up and, and take the reins, because a lot of times too with wrestling, it's, there's a lot of things that happen, in life that happen for guys that, are not really publicly known. And at the same time too, it's, I'm not a huge social media guy, as you probably should be, especially in wrestling. You're supposed to be pushing yourself or promoting yourself or being active on social media, and I'm not as active as I probably should be. But at the same time too, it's like, it's just it's hard to balance real life with what social media life looks like, because they're two different things a lot of the times.
Sure, and I wanted to get your opinion. A lot of wrestlers now will break kayfabe on social media. I kind of wanted to get your opinion. Like, do you believe in the old school way where it should just kind of be, play character all the time? Or do you believe it should be just, it's 2020, we should kind of learn to adapt?
I mean, it's hard because it's a different, like I feel like you can ask 10 different people that same question and you're going to get 10 different answers, of a different way. But a lot of the times it's so funny because some people, like for me, like people, when they met me, they thought that I had an accent. People thought that I talked that way, and the Croatian character of me on TV and whatever character I played, it was just an impersonation of my father, because my father talks that way. Like that's how my father sounds. So you know what I mean? Like it was basically just my father with the volume turned way up. You know what I mean? Like, which they're always saying you should try to find yourself and turn the volume way up on it. And that was kind of where I got like the character from. So it was like, I've known that character. So it was like, that's just what it was. And it was so weird because people when they would find out that I didn't really talk that way, they would get mad. So it's like in a world where everybody knows that it's a work, they're upset when something is not real, which doesn't make any sense to me at all sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's weird. But now that with social media, and they want more reality-based television. And I think everybody knows now too, like, because social media is so open and so active. And a lot of guys, they'll make it where you blur the lines where they're not too sure. And whenever you can blur the lines, that's what draws people in, no matter what it is. Whenever they question it, now you got it. Whether it's real or not, when they don't know, that's when people are interested, or when they're questioning it. So I think it can go both ways. It just depends on the person and the storyline. It's right place, right time, right circumstances. Like when injuries happen too, and people play off them, it's like, that's reality-based TV. You can't write that. Like when Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan, when Eddie got hurt with his eye with the baseball bat. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was a perfect example of the blurred line. And now it was that helped both guys, Now it was everybody's talking about it, whether it's good or bad. Everybody's talking about it. You know, we used to get a lot of flack sometimes from the other half of PWS for not being in character, and it was hard because everybody's like, well, everybody knows though. So like it was just, it's a very fine. It's just a hard line to go on. But I feel like just the fans in general want more reality based TV. But again, like I said, it's all circumstance. It's just right place, right time. It all depends on the storyline and the person. But it can go either way. It really can, especially nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, and then you mentioned it. I mean, Sammy, he's one of those guys that pretty much sticks to character on social media. And I think that's what I kind of really like about him. And I have nothing against, pro wrestlers that want to, talk whatever. But Sammy, like, really sticks to it. And Eddie Edwards coming out of that storyline, he developed a new character, too. So it's like it really kind of put them in a new stratosphere.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you just those are things you can't write. Like nobody wrote that. That was just, it's natural. And that's when they say, what is it? What's that saying? When reality, art.
It's art imitating life.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it becomes when art imitates life. That's what everybody wants, because it's that question mark. It's because a lot of the fans, they all, like, I'm the same way when I watch. Like, I want to not predict it. Like, a lot of the times I'd watch wrestling with my friends or other guys or people, people that weren't in the business, and we'd be watching shows and they'd be like, it's over. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then he'd kick out and they look at me and they're like, and I'm like, what? And then something would happen and I'm like, ball game. And they were like, 1, 2, 3. And they're like, how do you know? How do you know? And I'm like, it's I don't know. Like,
it's
you just
like,
I know. So people would not, nobody would want to watch wrestling with me because I would ruin it. But even now it's like, we all want to not, I don't want to be able to predict it. I don't like knowing the outcome of a match before I watch it. Like, if, like, I won't go on social media if I want to watch a pay-per-view. If I can't watch a pay-per-view, I'll be off social media for 2 days until I can watch it.
I think
I don't want to know that. I don't want to know who wins because it takes away from the match.
I think it's kind of like, to quote Denzel Washington in the 2001 film Training Day, "This shit's chess, it ain't checkers." So I mean, when you're just you just want to watch the psychology of a match, and I know people not want to watch wrestling with you because how do you know? But I mean, that's still cool, man, because you can tell by the psychology and the moves. It's on the chessboard. You know what I'm saying? You're just making these moves.
Yeah, it's like as you're watching, you're just like, like, I love being able to be surprised. That's why a lot of times, too, I'll stay off social media. Like, even just like this year's past Rumble, when Edge came back, dude, like, goosebumps. Mm-hmm. Like, goosebumps. Crazy. Like, that, like, gave me hope. You know what I mean? Like, like, for a guy like me, that's hope. I mean, and Edge was one of my all-times, like, he's one of my, top guys. Like, there's a select handful of guys, and he's one of them. And you're like, I was so happy to get to see that, like, just because he was always great about being able to, you could feel the emotion come out of him. And that's really what the business is about, is transferring emotion through action on television. Like, it's a live choreographed fight scene. And that's usually what I would try to tell students. Is we're theater in the round, like old school Shakespeare. Like, it's theater in the round and it's live choreographed fight scenes. And that's what we're doing. And it's telling a story of good versus evil, character versus character. What happens when the Joker meets Batman? What happens when your character meets Superman meets Batman? What happens when this character meets that character? I don't care about what physically happens, but what's going to happen when they meet. And that's like what it's about. I've always said too, it's Rocky and Apollo Creed. Every fight is Rocky, and I've heard Triple H say that as well. And I've told guys, like, I always thought that. To me, wrestling was Rocky Balboa. It was always Rocky and Apollo, or Rocky and Ivan Drago, or Rocky and Clubber Lang. And I took half of my character from Clubber Lang and Ivan Drago. I used to love Clubber Lang as far as his intensity and his robes and his gear, but the power and the nationality of Ivan Drago was like, so I kind of took both of those and combined them. So what if he's just Croatian instead of Russian, you know? But that was kind of like two of my big inspirations for the for the character was through those two movies, you know, too. So it's like they always say, it's like trying to find a character and, you know, put it together. It's like, that was just like, it's all character stories. It's, you know.
I mean, they ask you, what's the prediction of the fight? Pain. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I loved it. It's like, yeah, it's like there were so many good things, you know, like, and that was Hulk Hogan was in Rocky 3, so that was like back, you know, like.
Thunder Lips is in here in the flesh, baby.
Yeah, you know, like that was the stuff, man. That was the shit. You know.
So I guess there's so many wrestling companies right now, especially ones that have TV deals. What's kind of your plan of attack going in the next few years, even 2020?
I mean, that was too. I was been talking with the missus about a plan. I'm like, I really need to get a plan of action together, you know. And I recently just had a lot of MRI stuff done, and I had you know, all VNG and the EEG done on brain function and things like that to make sure everything is working well. I mean, honestly, too, last year I was diagnosed as bipolar. So I've been dealing with bipolar issues, taking medication for that. So this is like the first time I've said this to anybody, like publicly. So, but I'm not ashamed of it. It's just, it was something that people were like, well, maybe you really don't want to tell people that stuff. And I'm like, it's real life situations, like depression, anxiety, you know, self-doubt, self-consciousness, like those are things that can happen to anybody. And that does happen to normal people on a regular basis. Like just because I get in the ring and wrestle doesn't mean that I don't have other life problems, you know, like other people do. And it's one of those things, like I honestly, like I don't even like wish that on my worst enemies sometimes, because it's really hard dealing with those things. And wrestling is such a business that you're filled with critique all the time. You're constantly being judged on every single thing that you do by people, strangers, everything. You know, like you hear some horrible things called to you or said to you while you're in the ring, you know, and it's like, we always said it's, you know, you got to have tough skin in this business to make it, but, you know, but I really wanted to, for me, it was like, I just dealing with all that stuff. Like I want to get as healthy and make sure everything is good moving forward. You know, for me, I still want, I don't feel like I reached that finish line yet of where I wanted to go or get to. I mean, I always saw myself, you know, like WrestleMania was always everybody's goal. I think when you begin to, you know, when you step foot in the ring for the first time, WrestleMania is it should be, you know, like that's where you want to be, the champ, you know, like at the same time, it's like, if you don't want to be that, then why are you here? You know, if you don't want to be there, then what are you doing? You know, like you should want to be the best. You always want to be the best or go as far as you can, you know? And it's hard because I feel like I've let maybe myself down or other people down, but, you know, at the same time, you can't, you know, there's things that happen, injuries, and there's a lot of people I know that deserve to be, you know, in a certain spot or in a certain position, a certain place, but they're not because of circumstances or injuries or things like that. So my ultimate goal and dream right now would be to be able to get physically healthy again and, you know, remain active and, you know, hopefully one day be able to be, you know, in WWE or AEW, whether it be in you know, at this point I would take a referee's job. You know what I mean? Like just to be in any form of it. You know, if I get the opportunity to coach, I would love to do that as well, because coaching has always been a huge, you know, I mean, I spoke to you guys before about it, but, you know, at this point, you know, I'm a very open person. like just all the time. I love talking about wrestling. Like, so I'm so happy that you guys even asked me to do this, and I'm sorry if I ramble.
Oh no, dude,
a
don't
lot.
even worry. Dude, don't
No.
even worry about it. I mean, if you look from the referee standpoint, look at Nunzio. Little Guido was a ref for a little bit in WWE.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, James. Yeah, he's awesome. He's another guy from up north. So I mean, like I'm just, and not having wrestling for so long, and like even with Impact, feeling like you were so close, and then having it taken away, like it sucks. I'm not gonna lie. Like it sucks. Like Impact really, it sucked for me. It was hard. It was hard watching Fala and Kevin Matthews, and I love them both dearly. It's just, it was hard to sit home and watch these guys, like your friends there. And you're just like, I should be there, with them. Or I was right there, like what happened?
Well, I think
how did I get here,
Well,
and
dude,
it's hard to climb back out.
Well, Mario, I think you're an asset in your own right, like coaching, like you mentioned, WrestlePro. I always say Creative Pro, even on Long Island, Hicksville. I mean, with Kurt Hawkins, CPA, Max Caster, Francis Kipling Stevens, now Evil Kip. I mean, you're still doing your thing, and you're an asset to coaching these young kids, and yourself just applying your craft in your own right.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, having that for me was like, it's like that was even more rewarding sometimes than, wrestling itself, was watching someone that, you helped along and do something, great now, or just attain a goal that they wanted to attain, like, and especially since the last few months being hurt, and, I was planning on moving and things that, life situations and home situations and things with my family. Like I had to really step back a little bit last year from a lot of stuff, from coaching too, just to get some things put together. Because I had ran hard for like 19 years. Like everything was about wrestling. Like all my money went into wrestling. All my time went into wrestling, went into the gym, went into my body, went into working on, myself, went into the character, went into, whatever I could. Everything was always wrestling. And it cost me a lot of relationships, friendships, good jobs, like a lot of things. But that was the life I chose. I didn't care about money. I always wanted to be a professional wrestler. Like that was all I ever wanted, like, and it was just, I mean, even when I was like 5 years in, I had an opportunity, as a ref. When you guys were talking about Rob Conway and Simon Dean, right after I had those positions, I had worked with Rob Conway, and I originally got the opportunity because Sergeant Slaughter had seen a cage match that I had at ECPW, and he told me he had really enjoyed it and spoke very highly of it. And we got to go do some things, and Tommy Dreamer was head of talent relations then, and he was like, I think they're going to offer you something. And they offered me a job as a referee. And it was just shocking to me because I said I had always wanted to be a wrestler. And I was like 5 years in, I'm like 24. I'm young, I'm healthy, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And I didn't say yes right away. So because I didn't say yes, I said no in the retrospect. So it was like just a weird, like position. And they were like, I was already planning on moving down to OVW anyway, because I just got into I just passed the into the tryout, so it was like they knew I was moving down there already. So it was like, well, if you're already moving down there, then why am I going to pay you to move down there? Like, so it was just, that's one of those circumstances that kind of like, looking back on it now, like for a lot of the times I look back on that and I kind of kick myself, but I didn't know any better. And I didn't, now you see the referees now, and a lot of guys were ex-workers, like Bandito Jr., now he's a referee, Dan, referee, I can't even say his last name, and Amphibino, Dan. Mm-hmm. He was another. Sean Bennett refereeing now too. Like a lot of the referees that are
Drake Younger.
Yes, yes. Drake Young is a perfect example. Like,
Jessica Carr.
You know what I mean? Like, yes, Jessica. Yeah, and I'm so happy for her too because she was always awesome. Like such an awesome person, and she was always a really good worker. And always told her, I'm like, you just have so much character. Like when you work, it's just like it's so great to see how far she's come too. Like,
oh yeah, dude, Jessie K, MCW. Hello.
yeah, yeah, man. Jessie K was awesome. It's like great to see. It's great to see so many people that you've seen grow up, grow through wrestling, getting to do that. And it's really hard too. Just like I said, just still like, you just feel like you're on the outside looking in a lot of the times, but life happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. I'd still just want to be a part of it some way, somehow. I always wanted to just make a living through it, and hopefully I can still, like that's the ultimate dream still, was just to be able to support a family through it, and not, be able to do what you love and still be able to support your family.
Yeah, no, I mean that quick time you were in Impact, I thought you had a great look. I thought, you and Fala had something really cool, and I think we barely got to see you, and I'd hope any company would pick you up because I was definitely impressed from the short time you were there. I thought it's too bad that Impact didn't offer you a contract after that or a long-term deal, but yeah. I think any company that would, Ring of Honor, MLW, I think you'd make a perfect fit there.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, when we were there with Impact, they were it was 1-year deals, and it was a lot of automatic renewal basis, and there was just a lot of things because it was just so many things that were changing, at the time, and it was just it really wasn't. Originally, they were, as far as I knew, they were automatic renewal, 1-year contracts with automatic renewal, unless one party opts out with a 30-day written notice, and nobody gave anybody any written notice. I never got one. I never gave them one, and they never gave me one. So as far as I was concerned, I thought I was still under contract, but eventually you just stop hearing from people, and you kind of get the point. So you're like, okay, but a lot of things have changed since, from 3 years ago. So, I'm happy that I'm happy that they're doing well. I mean, I'm happy that there's so many places to work, and I'm, because everybody was always saying that, you didn't want to, if one place closes, it's less jobs for everybody in the business. So it's like, you should want everybody to thrive. You want every company to do well, because it's just more opportunities and more jobs for everybody. So it's like, you never wish ill on anybody or any company or anything like that. It's circumstances. It's just business. It's just the way the business works, and it's hard and it sucks at times. It is, a lot of times. I mean, leaving WrestlePro, coming down here, it's my last show there was from the curtain. I didn't get to, it was great seeing like Moff and Pat and a lot of guys get to have a real like send off, and
right.
I didn't really get to do that because I was injured, and it was just in circumstances. And one of my students was really, they looked at me and they were just like, it's not fair. And I'm like, life's not fair, babe. Said if life was fair, we'd all get everything we wanted, but it doesn't work that way. I said, but it doesn't change what I've done. It doesn't change who I've helped. I'll always know that, and they know that too. like everybody doesn't always get a happy ending. It doesn't always, you don't always get that glory day in the hot sun. But like it's just, you never know what tomorrow holds either. Like I said, you just got to keep on going. So I said, guys like Edge and things like that are just like, that's hope.
Right.
You see guys that are older and they're coming around, and guys like Chris Jericho. For me, like a guy like Dan Moff. He
just got signed to Ring of Honor.
Yeah. And Danny is long overdue. Overdue.
I mean, heck, PCO, he's the champion right now in Ring of Honor.
Exactly. Look, that's what I'm saying. Like, dude, like, look at it. Like, like there's no age limit, because I used to get told all the time that I was too old when I was in my late 30s. 35, 36. Everyone's like, you're too old. Fuck you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing now.
Yeah.
If PCO is 51 years old, it could be the Ring of Honor champion. Well, then hello, right?
Yeah. Like exactly. Like who's to say any? I met Bill DeMott, who I thought was really a really great guy. He really was. When I went down to the Monster Factory and met with Bill DeMott, and I loved him. Like from the first day that I talked to him, I just thought he was a great guy. Might have been stuff, I don't know. There's so many things in wrestling with so many people that people talk bad stuff about a lot of people. Like I always used to joke around and I'm like an old car. I don't got any heat, like I don't want heat with no, I have no heat, but no, like that's it. Like I treated people the way they treated me. So if they were good to me, then I was good, like that's all I knew. So I can't, I couldn't speak for people about anything or anybody, but everybody's always been just super nice to me because I've just been that way. I don't know. It's a hard business too. It's intimidating a lot of times when you walk into locker rooms or different places, and they want you're supposed to mingle and you're supposed to talk to people, but a lot of times people look at you like, who the fuck are you and why are you talking to me?
Right.
Like it's just it's a hard business to get around in sometimes, but you have to be a people person, and it's just those fine lines of
I mean, we had Homicide on last time, and he was telling us some interesting stories about meeting different wrestlers, and for the first time, it's just like there's that unwritten code, and you just don't. You're kind of walking on eggshells almost sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of the times, and that was like I felt that same way with like just with Impact too in general. It was like I was a lot more. And it was a very comfortable locker room. Like guys like James Storm was just awesome. Like just such a cool guy, like to sit and talk with us. And Nick Aldis too, like Eli Drake, EC3, like all those guys were really like, everybody had come up to us, and even a lot of the producers and other guys too. Then they came up to with myself and Fowler, and they were like, "You guys are good, dude. Like you guys are good. Like like we like your shit. Like you guys are cool. Like and you fit." And everybody was like. Everybody wanted to see us do well, and everybody wanted to see us get pushed or do something well, and then when someone comes up to you and tells you that you're going to be the power and glory of Impact, that you might get a win on a house show here and there, but you're basically just here to put people over. Mm-hmm. Like, it's kind of like, you're like, it's great to be in the business in general, like it's an honor to be in the business in general. But at the same time, it doesn't matter who wins or loses, but at the same time, it kind of does. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's another one of those awkward fine line eggshell things. Like, and it's so weird. Like for me, and carrying the Croatian flag on national television, like, and being the first guy to do that, and then you're not going to win a match though. Like the country is not going to get behind you. The country is not very proud of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's very hard to, like, it's just, you just want to know that if you start a job, any job, you don't want to go start that job and they're like, okay, basically this is as far as you're going to go. You know what I mean? Like right. If you started, a new job or a job that you really wanted to, and you just finally get that job and they're like, okay, you're only gonna get promoted once. That's it. Like you're not gonna make a manager, you're not gonna make district manager, you're not gonna make regional manager. You'll be lucky if you can manage yourself. Like
it's just like that ceiling's been put on you. I don't understand. I would never. I don't know if I was a promoter, I would never put that on anyone. I would kind of take it how it goes. I would look at every month. I'd look at it differently. So
exactly, like how can you say that? How can you tell somebody that and expect them, like to not take that the wrong way or not take that offensively? Or not like, and there's things that I'm proud that I stood my ground on certain situations that I didn't feel were just or not right. You know, like where they tell you, well, we've been there for months and everybody's just waiting for, the locker room's behind you. Everyone's behind you, and they're like, we're just waiting for something, like to get throw me a bone, throw us a bone, throw us something. Like, let us pick up a win. Let us just make us babyface. Like, let us be us. Like, just let us be us, and let us do our thing that we showed you we can do on house shows. And it was good. And everybody liked it, So we're like, and then you're told to, go out there and get squashed in 4 minutes and not get anything in. And you're like, can I at least get a German in? And it's like, they're like, isn't that your finish? And you're like, no. I've used it in every match I've ever had here. How can you think that's my finish? It's like, those are just the things that you were like, like it was, sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. And that could be the last thing you ever do. And in some cases, like for me, I feel like that was it. Like for me, it was. I felt like then I got hurt, but I wasn't, like it was just, I don't feel like that maybe put a great taste in people's mouths, but, I'm honest. I'm honest about everything. Usually to too much of a fault of my own, but, like you gotta stand up for yourself sometimes when you don't feel like things are going the right way, or if it's something's unjustly being asked of you. I'm just like, if you want guys to, put other guys, like, you don't, like, why contract somebody for that?
Right.
Especially now when they can pay somebody half of the price you're paying anybody else, and they can do just as well of a job, like
that's a really good point though. Yeah. I just don't see why you would invest in somebody and then just kind of put that parameter on them and they're not able to go above that. That's baffling to me, but I guess,
from a business standpoint though, like, doesn't it make more sense? Like, that's what usually a lot of promotions do in general. Other student promotions too. It's like, well, hey, I can keep my budget down by putting more students or guys from the area that want an opportunity to show something to help elevate my guys or our TV guys or our contracted guys, and pay them less or nothing, instead of, like you were saying, like, invest in somebody that you're only going to put a cap on as you're this guy. Like, it's like, like I would want, like, fantasy football, I guess. I don't play it, but I could understand. I don't know anything about it, but I'm assuming you want each one of your players to be the best player they can. You're not going to put somebody on your team that you're like, well, I just want him to be an average guy or a below average guy. You want all of your guys to be like whatever it is. I don't know anything about fantasy football, but I'm just saying, like, that's, like, if you're going to invest your time in somebody, I want them to be just as good as, the top guys, so I can change and swap them out if I need to,
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense to me. I mean, that's, love him or hate him, but that's one thing I really like about Vince Russo when he talks is when he books, he wants to get the whole roster on, and he wants to get everybody, he wants to get everybody over. And I think that's the right way to go. At least in that aspect it is.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately that's like what, ultimately it's, to accentuate everybody's positives. Like when we went over to OVW, like Paul Heyman's big thing was he was very big on accentuating your positives and hiding your negatives, and almost to a fault sometimes, that it was like he was able to accentuate so many guys' positives that by the time somebody found out their negative, they were like, well, their negative outweighs their positive. Like, like they were like, these guys were, and it was able to camouflage for a long time because he was so good at that. But like, and that's what I mean. Like, even in the business, it could be anybody, there's always that saying, fake it till you make it,
Oh yeah.
It's like, you never know. You never know in wrestling. It's a lot of it. It's all timing. It's timing of
a lot of things, and being in the right place at the right time, right person hears it, the right person says that, you know, like I've always just been a realist. I just tell you how I feel about something, or I'm probably too honest for my own good. But I mean, I know that I'm genuinely a good person and a nice person, and I want everybody to succeed. I'm not trying to do anything to downplay anybody or hurt anybody or hurt the product or hurt the company at all. You know, I want everybody to succeed too. It's just, I understand there's only so many spots, but you know, and that's one thing too, is there's only so many spots, you know,
Yeah.
especially in a lot of shows.
Yeah. I mean, you're only getting that, 2-hour or 3-hour time, I mean, it's, you can only do so much, but I feel like some shows, they can do a better job of it, obviously, of showcasing talents and making sure that, everybody kind of gets a piece of the pie.
Yeah. I mean, look how many guys too are under contract for, the big promotions, and it's hard to, it's just, there's only so many TV. There's only so much TV. There's only so much time. And I mean, like, honestly, even looking at the product now and some of the products, I'm like, I don't even know if I could hang on a product like that. Like my body wouldn't even hold up from the shit these guys do, like,
yeah,
it's incredible. Like, I mean, the athletes and the caliber of athlete today is like a hybrid person. Like, it's just crazy. It's like they were made in a science lab or something. Like, it's just crazy the stuff that they can do. But I'm like, I can't, I don't, I can't take. I think like even like a guy like Tommaso Ciampa, like I think I've heard that, like, I mean, I saw him at an ROH tryout camp before he even got signed with them, and I knew right off the bat too. He was another guy you were like, just like you big things, like you were just like, he's gonna do big things. And I mean, he showed up to that camp and he was hurt, and he had a problem with his knee or something, and it was like, and he still like outshined a lot of guys, and it was just like, but I think there's only so many, like, I don't know how much his body can hold up to. I mean, he was already had neck surgery. It was like, I felt like too was a takeover. He worked with Johnny Gargano.
Yep.
Yes.
They did like almost like the white noise.
Like the Celtic Cross, like the Finley movie.
Yeah, like off of like something and onto a table, and it looked really bad. Like, it looked like just a bad landing. And I remembered watching it. I mean, and I'm not discrediting anybody, any of those guys, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, like the best in the world. I'm not discrediting them at all. But I remember watching that bump and just thinking, they should not have done that. And a year later, he's having neck surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I just, unnecessary for me. I'm like, I just felt like it's just, there's a line, like, what else, like, where does it stop?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah.
It's just, I love all the guys, and I love, I love I'm probably burying myself. I don't know. I mean, like, I love the product. I love everything. I think everybody's great. It's just, like I said, I'm like, it's just, I see things like that, and I'm like, it makes me hurt to watch it, knowing the things that I've felt from doing, and to see like things like that and some of the bumps these guys are taking, and I'm like, it's just like, it's scary. Like, it's like, where does it end? Like, where does the line end? And it, like, and for what kind of reaction? Like, I don't know. Like, it's like,
when is it worth it?
Yeah, it's just scary, because there's life after this. Like, I've told a lot of students and guys, especially during the indie shows and matches, and I'm like, dude, you have to go to work tomorrow. Like I did. Like, same thing when I signed with Impact. It was like, I was like, everybody, it was like, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, they think you're like this big TV star and life's changed and you're on. I said, dude, nothing changed. I said, I worked a couple of loops, like maybe 6.
Yeah. Right.
Six loops for a couple days. I still went to work every Monday after I came back. My body was destroyed. after working 4 matches and like 2 matches on some days in a row or 4 days straight, flying down, and then spending 3 days and wrestling straight, and then you're like, and coming back and going right to work. And I did landscape contracting, physical work, like I was a foreman for my stepfather's company. Like the only thing that happened is I made a couple grand, and half of that went to bills that I had in debt, and then the other half I ended up using when I got hurt because I knew it wouldn't last.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reality of it. I'm like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, you were there when Impact was doing like 6 impacts in 2 days or whatever it was. It was crazy.
Yeah, they were back in the Orlando and Universal, and they were taping, every so often. So,
wow,
it was just like they were, it's hard, I can't imagine the guys on the road doing. It's just like for me now, I'm like, it's crazy. I'm like, I can't imagine the schedule.
Well, Mario, we thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
We'd definitely love to have you on again, maybe for like a big pay-per-view review show or something. But or even just check up on you and see how you're doing.
Of course,
absolutely, man. I would love to do anything. I'd love to. Anything I can do, I'd love to do it.
I would just like to add, and I will say this. I'm going to quote my Stone Cold Steve Austin now, when he's talking about the Stone Cold Steve Austin Unleashed, 316 Broken Skull Ranch, baby. I'm going to say this. If any of the listeners heard maybe a little Skype noise or a little chat, it's our boys of the Heelcast recording their show, so I'm going to say in my Stone Cold voice, I'm trying to record a world-class fucking podcast with Mario Bokara. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
It's been a while since I've gotten to, talk wrestling or do some wrestling. I could do it all day. So.
Oh, please! We love giving the platform for wrestlers and superstars like yourself to, give them the platform to tell their story. And it's really been a joy talking to you. Please promote the social medias. Everybody can find you, Mario.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Everything, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything is Mario and / what is it? Not
underscore.
Underscore, yes. I told you, I'm not a big social media guy.
Is that an exclamation point? Maybe
Mario
a question
underscore
mark?
Bokara, just my name. You search my name and you'll find it.
Links will be in the description. I was about to say, dude, we're going to get that semicolon, going to get the exclamation point, middle question mark. I like your style.
Yeah. It's the underscore. Just looks like a space.
Got you. All right. But yeah, we'll have it so everybody can check out Mario. This will be on the YouTube for the Heelcast, the whole 9. Hurls, take us home.
Yeah, well, Mario, once again, thanks. And show will be posted in a couple days. So
awesome.
I can't wait for the listeners to hear it because like me, we saw you, I've been watching wrestling for a long time. And, I like a lot of guys where I can see they have a lot of potential, and then, your story's unwritten, so
yeah.
We'd love to see you back on, and we're hoping that happens. We'll definitely be vouching for you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm hoping, I hope so too. I just, like I said, want to just contribute in whatever way I can at this point. And the dream was always just to be able to, just do wrestling in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully, it's still on the cards for me.
I'm going to say this. Listeners, support Mario Bokara. This concludes another edition of My Impact. For Larkin, for Hurls, for Mario Bokara, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. Mario, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.